get started, and then I'll just be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, nice shots. All right, so already just a little bit with our shots here on like the hog, for example. We see just a little
Hmm.
bit of unnecessary flicking going on, like where we go to the hog and we look off of the hog, and we go to the hog and we look off of the hog, and then you see the
Yeah.
kind of flicking to the right. Just want to make sure that I don't know if this might have been something we talked about last time. I'm probably be saying
Hmm.
that all the time here since we last time we did this session was like what 3 months ago, so
Yeah.
um, something like that. So might be I might not be fully aware of like what we've discussed previously, but just when it
Mhm.
comes to um, shooting shots, normally flicking isn't always going to be necessary, and in fact, sometimes it can just make it be more harmful than it is beneficial.
Right.
Especially if we're going off of the target. So in this situation, you might as well just stay on the hog rather than just going uh, hog left, right? That's going to
Right.
just keep it on top of them, make your shots easier. And then the times the flicking is necessary is when it's a fast moving target, such as the tracer, or somebody just appeared on our screen, or we're like surprised by somebody, right? Those are all instances where flicking might be necessary, but not when we're just like already looking at a hog.
Okay.
Besides that, mechanics looking pretty solid so far.
I need healing.
Okay, good request of healing and paying attention to their health bar. All right. Though it's seeming like awareness might be something that we're needing to work on. So here we
Yeah.
just want to make sure we're paying attention to our surroundings. We kind of tunnel vision in on the Genji there, and then completely forgot about everyone in this direction, even though there's a
Right.
ton of people over here. Right? We just want to make sure we're paying attention, right? Being aware, so we're not getting hooked.
One shot.
All right. So we swap over to the
One
Widow.
kill.
Yeah. I noticed they had a widow, so I switched to widow.
Hmm. If she's not paying attention to you, you might as well just like not go for
A hook
like
shot.
a hook
Yeah.
shot. Yeah, like a hook shot's really only gonna be necessary like if she's looking at you and it gets you the surprise advantage. But if you
Right.
already have the surprise advantage, why make the shot harder when we could just come main and shoot her normally, right?
Right.
Parfait.
Okay.
Okay, we probably want to be just plopping a venom mine down just so we have it there if in case like a Genji comes on us or something like that.
I see.
Very nice.
My ultimate is ready. Let's do this.
Okay, very nice. Yep, not a whole lot going on. We're getting a lot of kills. Make sure we're just grabbing the health pack real quick, because there's a health pack right there, just so we're
Oh.
not sitting at low health. Alright,
Okay.
nice shots. Mechanics looking very, very solid. We probably be taking the high ground right about now.
Yeah.
Um, so we had grapple for a long time. One of the things I am noticing a little bit of is just actions per minute, where there's a lot of times where we just take random delays and pauses in between doing things. So I
Hmm.
might have talked about that last time, but just as a refresher, right? Actions per minute is just doing things as often as possible. And a good comparison is to go and compare a bronze player to a grandmaster player, right? A grandmaster player is going to be efficient with most of their gameplay almost every single second of their time, where they're going to be doing something constantly. Whereas if you look at a bronze player, they might go pew 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 shoot shoot shoot, and then they might pause randomly, and then they're going to go pew 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 shoot shoot shoot, and they're going to be like, oh, look at the pretty birdies, and then they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm in a fight, right? Pew 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 shoot shoot shoot, and it's just a lot of random pauses in there where they're not being as efficient with their time, and you kind of see that in something like this, where we kind of like come
Yeah.
over to the side and then just sit here for a couple seconds. Like we sit here and we sit here and we sit here and then we grapple up, right? And then it's just like that random like 3-second delay, which is just happening like pretty frequently. Which just means that we want to make sure that we're being efficient with our time, right?
Okay.
Grapple up here faster because there's no reason not to, right? It's just really good
Right.
visibility to see everything. The only reason why we wouldn't have wanted to do this previously was when they had the Widowmaker, but
Mm.
now they don't have a Widow if we're paying attention to tab and kill feed and whatnot. Or tab being the main one, right? We'd see that they don't have a Widow. All right, and then honestly, pretty solid round to start off. And then notice again, that's just kind of a little bit more of like the actions per minute or like hesitation there, like where we're just kind of like sitting here, like where we could be pushing forwards and shooting at things, but we
Yeah.
just kind of sit here and we back up and then we back up, or we kind of hesitate and spot in place, right? Just pick a direction, go with it, and then we're here, we're just kind of hesitating, and then now we start shooting at stuff. That's good.
The objective is now active.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
make sure make sure we concentrate on getting that shot in afterwards.
I feel like a new man. Easy. Rest in peace. All patched up.
Taking the objective. I am loving this.
Just thank you.
Let's up the tempo.
Whoa there.
Very nice. Oh, nice usage of cover there and running away like that. It's good.
Now hold on.
Okay, right while we were in there, maybe we could have used this time to just be rotating up. We kind of sit in that room and probably would be a smarter decision not to. Wait, how did we, oh, I didn't skip forwards there. All right, so we drop in. We have this time where we're kind of sitting here, and maybe this time we could be using to be rotating over this way, right, to like maybe retake a high ground or something like that, or can get away further. But we kind of sit here, and then that just makes them, it lets them push us pretty easily. Alright, and then because they push us, now we're stuck, and oh, maybe we somehow escape. No, we're dead. Alright. So there, maybe just, rotating a bit faster.
Okay.
Back into the mix. Group up. Form up here.
You feel that? Yeah, let's pick it up. Feel the healing beat.
It's time.
Very nice. I like that we're not holding on to that. Make sure we're reloading whenever we can't see things.
Don't move.
Nice kill.
I think I died here.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
rough hook. Yeah, I think one of the that's just one of the biggest things I'm noticing at the moment is we're seeming to stay alive a decent bit. We're kind of we have good mechanics, but one of the biggest things I'm noticing is just that we have a really slow pacing where we're just
Right.
kind of waltzing around. We're taking everything super slowly, and then therefore we miss out on a lot of times where we could
This
be
life's
doing
never
things,
uneventful.
and could be shooting. There's times where we just kind of stare at people without shooting. That's unfortunate our team pushed in without us, but we also in that last fight maybe could have died earlier because
Mhm.
when the fight had been lost. So like if we going back and look at this last fight, right, the fight had been lost by this point because it's just one. Or I guess it hadn't been lost at this point. It's gonna be lost in a moment here when we lose those two people. Now it's a one,
Yeah.
2, 3, almost 4 versus 1. So, but once they get die, then it's lost, and we maybe try to stay alive a little bit too long. So maybe we could like when we see it's lost, we just let them kill us faster. That way we don't stagger ourselves, right? And come out of spawn super late. And then that means that hopefully we're coming out with our team when we come back. But here,
This
because
life's
here they
never
all just going
uneventful.
without us. Very nice shots.
Pardon me.
All right.
Whoa there.
Very nice. Okay, just like ability usage is looking pretty solid. Right, just notice the like the just the lack of doing things, right? So we get the kill on the tracer, right, and then we just kind of sit there, right? So
Whoa there.
we stop shooting at things. We're only down a couple HP, right? We still have a decent amount, but we shoot once and then we stop shooting and we shoot once, right? It's just a little bit and then we back completely up and then we stop when we stopped pushing and we're backed up. Right, that just whole backup sequence was unnecessary. So there we could have just spent a lot more time shooting and we weren't doing it. I'm also noticing quite a bit of like tap firing where instead of holding down our shoot button, we're just going pew 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 pew, right,
Right.
instead of going shoot 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 shoot. And that's essentially that's like you nerfing yourself. Kind
Okay.
of
Yeah.
how that works, right? One of the big things with McCree like was that he used to be he had a big nerf, right, where he went
Mhm.
from shooting a lot like really fast to shooting just kind of a little bit slower. And the reason why that's a nerf is because it means that you're killing things slower. And when you're killing things slower, they have more time to get away, to escape, to get
Right.
healed, to get tanking. And then that means that you just aren't securing kills as fast, and we're just kind of doing that to ourselves when we're just firing super slowly. So we want to make sure we're kind of holding it down rather than just tapping it. User role. Actually, flashbangs have been looking pretty solid, but I'm gonna take a look because it doesn't seem as if we're using our role. Um,
Okay.
like we just went through. We're at 9 minutes. Maybe we just like put on 2 times and like look for roll, like when we use roll. Okay. Not using it. Right. Not using it. Okay.
Yeah.
Skip. Just wait till we get back. Walking back from
Back into
spawn.
the
Make sure we're using
mix.
roll. Okay. So okay, there we go. We use roll. Just use it a little bit earlier maybe. Okay. We use roll to get back. Okay. So we use it twice there. That's good. We're just gonna keep watching. See how frequently we're using it. Okay, so we use it there. It's looking like we're using it for mobility at the moment, is the main thing we're using it for.
Mhm.
Oh, excuse me.
Alright, so it's not seeming too terrible. I would probably say just like we're using it slightly inconsistently. Like we just want to use it slightly more often. the big one is just think about the ways that you can use it. Roll has three different main purposes. You use it for mobility to go somewhere faster. You can use it to dodge out abilities or to dodge anything, and then you can also use it to reload. It's looking like the main one that we use it for is just using it for mobility, but even then, sometimes we're like, when we're coming out of spawn, might want to use it like as fast as possible. Like we kind of walked out when we could have used it like right here, so we just get the cooldowns back as fast as possible. We kind of waited until we
Okay.
are like right here to use it, and that means that we get like one less rotation of it in. Um, and then yeah, besides that, just using it like for the other purposes more often, like dodging and reloading.
Don't move.
Very nice. It looks like we're doing really good on that tracer. All right.
I think around that time, sorry for cutting you off, but I think around that time is when the tracer typed in chat, "What part of Asia are you from?" or something like that, because I kept headshotting them. So yeah, that was just
Huh.
funny too.
All right. So just want to make sure that we're reacting to Doomfist faster. Here, this would be a perfect example or situation where we can use roll to dodge out an ability. Like we don't have flashbang, we don't have any other way that we can dodge this. But if we roll, then that's just if we go left or right with it, then that's just gonna get us out of the way of his punch, right? So this is just an example of a situation where we can use roll defensively. Also, just make sure we're identifying that he's there faster, so we can maybe get out of his way.
Okay.
Back into the mix.
Meteor strike.
Make sure we're not walking into fire strikes.
Yeah, that's a big problem I have for some reason.
Yeah, that's when I had to.
Get inside.
Okay, notice this time where we just like notice like this again where we just kind of sit here and look, sit here and look, and then we go for the shot, and then we sit here and look, and then we go for the shot, and then right, it's just time where we could just be go for spam shoot, go shoot into a shield, go for shield break. You just want to be doing things more often, whereas we just are kind of really reserved with how often we're shooting. And then even there, it's just I don't maybe it might be left like just tap clicking. I don't know if we're tap clicking there, holding it down, but it might look as if though we are as if we are.
How about a little extra? Enemy close. Step inside.
Hold up.
Nanoboost administered.
What is that?
Tactical visor activated.
Okay, very nice. So in this situation, we are winning this fight, and we go for the high noon. So I guess actually we had two people in spawn. I didn't even notice that. So we are down two people at the moment. It's a 1 2 3 4 versus 1 2 3 4. The big thing that I'm thinking of here, like when we're using our high noon, is the fact that we just popped three other ultimates. We use Visor, we use Sigma, we use Nano, and we see all three of those being used. That's maybe a big like, and when you guys are pretty
Yeah.
even, right? You're a 4v4. That's a pretty good indication that you might want to at least like hold on to your ult for a little bit. We probably don't want to just use it right off the bat there, because then it just doesn't. It just ends up getting largely wasted when we could
Hmm.
have just let our team use their ults, right? And then that means that we have our ult for the next fight. I don't know if that's maybe something we talked about in the past, right? Is just watching the kill feed, and yeah, like if I just went back and looked at our notes real quick from the last time we did a session, right? That was one of them. Is just like watch your kill feed, right? Up on the 2 is an advantage or disadvantage. Yeah, when up or down, 1 to 2 is a disadvantage or advantage, right?
Hmm.
2 to 3 is a won or lost fight, right? And then you don't use ults in one or lost fights, so that'd just be a situation where like we were even, but we had such a big advantage from like all the ones that we're using that we might want to be hesitant with it.
Excuse me for dropping in.
just be spam shooting. Like, you know, when you see these guys for like a little glimpse of a second, right? We've seen a couple people just through the cracks, just be shooting at that, get ult charge in, right? Create some pressure. Nice shots. Oh, okay. And then that's a lost game. In that last fight, it seems as if though this game we're almost exclusively going for the DPS. So I think which I think is all right. So we're kind of sitting in our team because we're trying to be the counter to them. Here we kind of like back ourselves out really far because we just kind of back away, which puts us like pretty far away from helping our team, right? We end up getting multiple picks, and then we have to go and touch point, and then we end up just not. Our team just doesn't touch. So maybe we could try to just go in faster to touch point, but besides that, that's not really the main thing. So let's just do strengths and weaknesses real quick because that's
Okay.
kind of what we're working on here. So let's get back to your POV. Honestly, we don't do terrible this game. We do pretty good. We don't die super often. We do things, but it seems to be like the thing is that we don't seem to be doing enough, right? We just
Mhm.
aren't doing enough to carry. Like we're doing, I'd say we're doing our job pretty solidly, but doing your job isn't always going to be enough to win games when your team isn't good, right? So
Okay.
ability usage wise, honestly, we're doing pretty fine in it. So ability usage is kind of like a low priority. Ultimate usage, there's a couple things that I'd probably like say, like we had the one where we used it in a fight that we didn't need to, and then besides that, there's not a ton. So that one's going at like probably a low to medium, but we'll see more as we go along here. Besides that, mechanics just generally are looking pretty solid. Though the big one in the mechanics category is just going to be actions per minute because that's just kind of constantly been a thing that's been throughout this entire game. It's just that sometimes we just randomly take breaks and pauses and we're going really at a slow pacing, which just means that we're not often able to output enough, right? Even if we are hitting our shots, we're not outputting enough. Make sure we're shooting at our kind of our max fire rate and we're doing spam shots and we're not just sitting there and existing, but we're actively participating. And that because of that, that's probably putting our mechanics category at a high priority. That's the biggest one we have so far. Besides that, awareness and positioning. Positioning we haven't talked a ton about yet. And so far it's looked pretty decent. We've spent like for example in this last fight we just went a little bit too far away, and that's a trend I'm
Yeah.
noticing a little bit is that we're a lot of times we're just kind of sitting a little bit far away. um though I haven't talked about it yet, I definitely think that positioning might be something we will talk about here. So I think positioning for the moment is going in a medium, maybe a low to medium, and then awareness is looking like probably number 2 at the moment of things to work on, and that's maybe going at a medium. Just because sometimes we don't notice what's going on around us, like when 3 of our teammates are using ults, or when the Doomfist is sneaking up right next to us, or when our whole team's dead. We want to make sure that we're, like for example, in the last map, this ties into watching kill feed, right? When our whole team's dead, then we want to be looking to get out if possible, or just to let them kill us, right? And in that situation, we're like on their side of the map, so there's almost no way you're getting out. So you just let them kill you, so you're not staggering yourself, right? Um, just we've probably talked really in depth on that, or like on that before in the past, but you remember what staggering is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this game. Honestly, you played pretty decently. Though it was just that little, it was the lack of the carry potential that was what kind of didn't allow us to do what we could have done. Now, do you have another code that we can go over? That went pretty
Yes.
fast.
Actually, I do. Oh wait. Here.
Welcome to Hollywood. Ready for battle.
Alright, so we are in depth still.
I heard.
Okay, just notice again some of the awkward. I'm gonna try not to talk too much on
Let's
this
get a move
topic,
on.
but I just want to point out that it's like it's happening a lot. So as we come in, just notice kind of the awkward pauses where we don't really do very much. So like here, when we
Right.
could be shooting at the shield, we don't. We shoot like once, and then we could be shooting at spamming on shield still. We don't. Okay, now we shoot at Farah. That's fine. And then after Farah's gone, we probably should be spamming at the shields and stuff like that, and just spamming down the corridor. But we kind of like have this slow shooting. And then here we just kind of take a really awkward pause over here to the right side where we're not really doing too much in particular, where again we could just be spamming in, doing damage. Alright, now that's fine, we're shooting at the Farah, good, fine. Okay. Roll forwards aggressively to flash him there, right? If you want to get that extra stun in, that's going to stop his healing. It's going to allow to keep him dead. So here, when you see that he gets hooked, we can roll forwards, flash him, right click him, whatever. We just want to make sure we're just keeping him dead there. Okay, just rewatch that real quick. Alright, there we just kind of step a little bit out in the open. We want to make sure that we are paying attention to the Roadhog there. It's right next to us. You got to remember that, this is probably a topic that we've talked about before, but just positioning wise, right? Good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover, but the usage of cover does not just stop at standing next to something. Obviously, right now we're standing next to the car, which is cover, but that is not the usage of cover. The usage of cover would be using the car to stop the hog from hooking us, right? Which would mean like we'd have to see the roadhog and duck behind it, right? So we just have to remember that the usage of cover doesn't stop with just standing next to something. It also involves ducking behind the cover, right? So when we see roadhogs looking at us, we might want to just duck behind the cover so that if he hooks us, we don't get hooked, right? No, I don't remember what spot we are. We were 8, all right? And then that maybe keeps us alive, right? Just looking to cut out our deaths, because remember, deaths aren't very good. It means that you can't do anything for 20 whole seconds, and we also put our team at a big disadvantage. Here we can probably push forwards and just keep shooting at stuff. Like they barely have any people alive, and we have our whole team here. All right, we're 2 minutes. Why don't we go over range real quick? This might be something like we've gone over McCree a lot of time in the past. It looks like we've gone over McCree multiple times before, so this is probably something we've gone over before. But just as a reminder, a lot of the times it seems that we're content with just kind of sitting really far back, which, just as a reminder, isn't where you want to be positioned on McCree. You are a mid-range character, or actually a close to mid-range character. Usually with my position, I recommend like somewhere within 10 to 30 meters roughly, positioning wise. But we're usually, this 30 meters plus away from people, or not usually, but oftentimes I'm noticing that we're 30 meters plus away from people, which is just too far away. Right, you have fall off damage, so that means the further away we are, the less damage we do. Here it takes us 1, 2, 3 shots to body shot. We just move past that. Now it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, snap. Move 1 inch back. 1, 2, 3, 4 shots to kill, right? Just by moving a couple inches away, right? A couple meters away, right? Now we move like even further, and now it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we back up all the way over to here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, you get the point. It's also a lot less. We're gonna be a lot less accurate from back here. It's gonna be a lot harder to hit our shots from this distance, whereas a guy right here is gonna be a lot easier to hit our shots than someone all the way over there, because we don't have a scope, we don't have a lowered sensitivity, so those shots are very difficult to hit. So like I said, roughly within 10 to 30 meters, we're not going to want to play outside of that, whereas oftentimes we're just not putting ourselves within the best distance. So that means that when we prefer this range, we're going to try to put ourselves within that range and actively walk towards that range, not actively back up past that range, because a lot of times we are backing up way too far away, and you can kind of see that in like how we're just shooting at the Pharah, in that we're just kind of sitting there, like we're not pushing forwards and taking space. We're just sitting at the choke, sitting really far away, where we're not really gonna be doing a whole lot of damage to her. Like we kind of, let's see, when we die, we come back. Right, we shoot it far a little bit. Like, notice the distance at which we're doing this. This is pretty far away from her, right?
Right.
That's pretty far. Yeah, we just kind of sit in place, right? We just kind of sit here rather than pushing closer. Whereas let's think of like a way that we could get closer. Okay, we take high ground, we wrap around. Okay, well now this is much closer to Farah, and it's gonna be there for a much easier kill, right?
I need healing.
All right, make sure we're watching those shots come in and we're actively dodging them, right? Farah, you can, the advantage of Farah being a projectile character is you can see her shots coming in. So when we see these shots that are coming in, like right at our face, we might want to dodge out of the way by, you know, moving to the side. Make sure we're not walking in a straight line. Here we just kind of like walk straight forwards. Instead, we might want to zigzag around a little bit, walk left, walk right, make it a little bit harder for her to hit us. Right, mix up our movement. Yeah, noticing here we weren't really attempting to just take any space or be, you know, aggressive at all. And so far with our positioning, I'm trying to think of how to mention this. A lot of times we just, or I guess like here in particular, you can see like how we're not taking the high ground. So just as a reminder again, because you know that's where we're going through a lot of at the moment is just reminders, right? High ground positioning is fantastic. We want to look to take high ground positioning, which at the moment we're not, right? High ground positioning is going to give you survivability. All these characters besides like Farah can't get to you. They look at you, you back up away from the ledge, they can't see you, right? So additional survivability. You also have tons of visibility. It gets you closer to them. It acts as an off angle, which we probably have talked about before, right? If I like glance back at the stuff, yeah, we did talk about we talked about target priority and off angles, right? If I just I just glanced back at our stuff real quick, our notes. So like we talked about this, so this acts as an off angle. It's going to get us around the shields, which a large portion so far of our gameplay has just been us shooting at the shields and shooting FR from super far away, and then never getting anything accomplished. So we want to make sure we're taking high ground, which should be better positioning.
You got a lot to learn.
Okay, and then even now, we just want to be taking the high ground, because we just spend a lot of time shooting at tanks there. Alright.
Winston reporting.
Group up at my position.
I need healing. I need healing.
Okay, take the high ground. Want to be taking the high ground. Or we just kind of sit in main. We kind of seem locked to our team at the moment, and we just got to remember that that's not how most of these characters are going to operate. There we also just kind of stand down the open. We've died 3 times so far on this attack, so we just got to make sure we're trying to stay alive as well. We did a little bit better of that last game, where like we only died like once a round or maybe twice a round. But here we're dying quite a bit. Right, and we just want to remember to try to stay alive, because when we're staying alive is when we're actually doing the most.
I'm not a young man anymore.
So don't walk ahead of your tanks and kind of stand on the open. Don't stand still. Drop a health pack for yourself. Yep, there you go. Yep, just the entire game, we're just kind of sitting at choke here. The exact same fall off applies to Soldier as well as McCree, right? So the same thing applies, that we just probably should be pushing in and doing things. Yep, and then because of our positioning, we're just, most of this game, we're locked with either shooting at one of 3 things, right? We're locked at shooting at Farah, tanks, and that's it, right? Well, just those are the only things we're able to shoot at. So we gotta just remember the main points that we talked about, like that we had like previously, right? If I just read this off the notes real quick, right? Target priority. You shoot at tank supports and DPS, not at tanks, right? Tanks are gonna be the hardest things to kill. You don't want to shoot at tanks, therefore don't try to shoot at tanks all the time. There are times where you do, when they're low, when they're out of position, when they're the only thing to shoot at, but otherwise we're gonna want to look to get around them. So you look to take off angles and you look to take high grounds, right? And then those are gonna get you around the tanks, and they're gonna allow you to get to the things behind. And yet we're kind of the entire time here, we just kind of sat in the front line, and then that didn't enable us to do anything, right? Alright.
10 seconds remaining.
I'm not a young man anymore.
If everyone performs.
2, 1. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
Powered up.
Get it done. You for your acting ability. Let's get moving.
Enemy visually confirmed.
Okay, notice again the range at which we are voluntarily putting ourselves at is much outside of that 30-meter range, which is meaning that we're just not doing nearly as much damage or as we could potentially be doing. So positioning is really off here. Okay, I like that we're going up to contest her. Good job. I like that we take the high ground there. That's a good idea. Oh. Yeah. Generally, mechanics is looking like a thing that we need to get back into. How? Can you remind me again? How recently did you get back into the game?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, mechanics is looking like it's still something to like put some thought and effort into. Though I think a lot of the other ones are definitely just bigger than just general mechanics. Those general mechanics of just shooting at things also is still needing a lot of work. All right. Another thing we're gonna mention here. Think about notice how frequently we're swapping targets, and we look at one thing to shoot at something, and then we swap to the next. So we shoot at Ashe, right? We turn the corner, we shoot at Mercy, and then we back up, and then we're going to shoot at Ashe, and then we're gonna get healed, and then we're gonna shoot at Reinhardt, and then we're gonna swap to and then we're gonna swap to the Hanzo, and then we're going to swap over to the the Moira, and then the Mercy, and then the Roadhog, and then we're going to swap over to the Reinhardt in a moment here, and then we're going to swap from Ryan to Hanzo, and then we're going to swap from Hanzo to Ashe, right? We're never going to kill anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Never going to accomplish anything. We're going to go tap, 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 and between everybody, and then they're just going to get healed, and they're never going to die, all right? Remember the things that we talked about before of just like when you don't kill something fast, they're not going to die. So if you're just tapping someone with damage and then moving on, they're not going to die. So what we want to do instead is focus on one thing individually, and make sure focusing until it dies. Now, that's not to say that you never swap targets, but there's the situations where you do swap targets, right? So it's pretty much the same things as, when do you look at a tank? You swap targets when there's another target who is lower health, who is out of position, who's just a better target to go for. Maybe they're being focused by your team. Maybe you have you're a team ultimate. Like maybe you might swap from the Ashe to the, I don't know, if Ashe backs away from the ledge, you might swap from the Ashe if you can't shoot at her anymore, right? So there's times that you do swap away from people, but it's not like every 2 seconds you're swapping to a different person. We want to make sure that we're focusing on one person. So here, if we're looking at the Ashe, we should be focusing on the Ashe until she dies, unless we see a better target or unless she just runs away. Right? Those are the. But this is just what we should be doing, unless we just miss our shots, right? But then we swap over to these guys, and we go high ground, right? It's just kind of all over the place in what we're trying to accomplish. Good dodge to escape it. Make sure we're not dropping from high ground unnecessarily.
Right.
There we just kind of gave up high ground and dropped into a really bad position. The high ground's not as good on defense, unless they're right below you. So the reason being is that when they're all the way over here, they're at such a kind of a wide angle that they're going to be able, no matter where you are on the high ground, they're basically going to be able to see you from all the way over there. But once they're right below you, then that's a different story, because when they're right below you, then like you can kind of see the big difference when they're right there. We just duck away from the ledge, and then no one there can see us, right? So there's a big difference between that. That's why on attack it's just usually going to be better, because on attack, right, they aren't like super far away from it to where they can see you on the high ground. Like if you look from the low ground here, you can't really see the high ground from anywhere over here, unless maybe you're up here, then you can see the high grounds. But like you nowhere on point can you see the high ground, which means that on attack it acts as a better cover. And when they're right below here, that acts as better cover. But when you don't want to be sitting up here usually when they're like just walking in, because there's just not cover anywhere for where they're at, right? And now that they're pushed in, now we can maybe look to take high ground. That is an option. Oh, massive. I like the high noon there. High noon's honestly been looking decently solid.
Group up here.
Right, so we just revise our placements here a little bit with some of the what am I saying? Sorry, we revised some of the placements here with the different strengths and weaknesses, right, of where they're placed on our list here. Probably would say the mechanics is still solidly in the lead at number 1. Number 2, though, I probably say is going to positioning. Number 3 is still awareness. 4 is probably looking like old usage still, and number 5 is probably looking like our abilities.
All better. For now.
Let's get you back in the fight.
Easy.
Go for the headshots on him. He can't dodge him. He's just standing still. Uh-oh. Make sure we're listening and keeping our ears open so we can hear him faster, so that we don't get caught off guard by him. Use your roll to avoid him when we just see him when he turns the corner. That one was just all pure awareness, right? The only way we survive there is if we're aware of the fact that he's coming faster.
Back into the mix.
Yep, taking the high ground here is actually a really, really decent option. Like when they push in, not originally, but once they like get right underneath the high ground, then it becomes really effective, and you can even contest their DPS when they go high ground, like the Ashe is. Like, and notice the range at which we're putting ourselves again, just really far back.
30 seconds.
This is not the end.
Okay, there we don't seem to notice that there was a shatter, so we never went and capitalized on the shatter. In fact, we didn't know there was a shatter, and we actually like shot at thin air. So notice how like Reinhardt lands a massive shatter right around the corner there, and everyone's down. Then we turn the corner, and we actually just fire above everyone because we don't realize they're on the floor. Right, and then we swap to the Ashe, which this would be a pretty easy kill on the Hanzo there if we're just looking at the Hanzo. So that's a situation where we're just on the wrong target.
Okay.
Okay, could be taking high ground at the moment. Make sure concentrating on just landing that flashbang. Alright. And then that's lost. Okay, we're just burning through these real fast. Which is strange. I think the reason why is just because we've gone over a lot of these concepts before, so we don't have to go super in depth on a lot of them. As well as just coupled by the fact that a lot of the ones we're talking about can be just easily explained as we keep playing it. I'm not needing to pause it a ton. But here, in any case, we could probably go through a little bit of another one. Definitely not an entire other 10-minute one, but do you have any others?
Let's see. What? Let's see. I don't think I have another one.
Okay. Well then we can really, I think at this point the last thing would just be like the last thing we just have to do is do the like the review wrap up and whatnot.
Yeah.
Trying to think, is there anything else that we could do? Um, I think that's pretty much it. So why don't we just go over everything we talked about?
Okay.
Okay. So main points, number one is going to be our mechanics. There's a ton that we talked about. Make sure that we're just remembering to keep crosshair placement, right? So we can like just practice our mechanics and put effort into getting it back, because at the moment just general mechanics to go and pew pew shoot shoot. Those are looking kind of mediocre. Definitely not like super trash, but also not the best. So we probably want to look to concentrate to just get back into just shooting things good, right? Besides that, we have a whole lot of other stuff in this category, so making sure that we're shooting at the right things, so target priority, that was something we talked about, of just making sure we're not constantly shooting at the tanks, but looking to shoot at the supports and the DPS instead. Even bigger than that is going to be your actions per minute, which a lot of times you just sat around and didn't do much, like when we could be doing things. So actions per minute of like constantly doing something. So we're like, we get these kills, we roll up top, we look for other kills. So we're just constantly shooting, constantly putting out damage, right? Just constantly doing something. Whereas, you know, when you're not being efficient, you might go pew pew, sit around, then we go pew 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 pew, right? And then we maybe slowly walk to high ground, and then we go pew pew, random pause, okay, pew pew pew, right? It's just we want to make sure that we're constantly doing something, we're being efficient with our time. We're not sitting around and not doing anything for just random pauses, right? Besides that, one of the other things is just make sure we're not swapping targets, right? When we swap targets, it just means that we just aren't being efficient, right? So we don't want to go pow 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 pow, and then we swap, and then we keep going back and forth. This isn't going to be very efficient. Instead, we want to stick on one thing until they're dead and then move on, right? We swap targets if there's something else better to shoot at, someone who's low, someone who's out of position, someone who your team is focusing, or maybe you're ulting. But like besides those, we're not going to want to just randomly swap targets 10 times in the middle of a fight, right? That's just going to mean that you're not going to end up killing anything. And then that, I think, is it for mechanics. Now, moving on to number two is our positioning. Want to make sure we're using cover still, right? And it's not, remember, just good positioning is the usage of cover, not the absence of cover, where that is bad positioning. But the usage of cover isn't just I'm going to stand next to cover. That's a very massive part of it. But you also have to make sure you're using it, right? So when a hog's right there and he's staring straight at us, we might want to go, oh snap, let's duck around the corner so that he can't hook me. Right, so we just want to make sure we're using it, not just standing next to it. Make sure that we are using off angles and high grounds, right? High grounds, as long as they're like right above them, act as off angles. High grounds are fantastic positioning, right? They give us good cover usage. They all give us survivability because people can't get up to us. They give us good visibility to get to place to place. They also act as off angles because we can just really easily shoot above shields and tanks and just get to the back line super easily. On top of that, just take regular off angles as well. Don't feel like you're bound to your front line, because a lot of the times you just kind of sat with their team and that was it, right? Look to get in closer, do things. Make sure that we are using our proper ranges. On McCree, a lot of times you just sat way too far away, remembering the McCree's kind of like 10 meters to 30 meters roughly, whereas a lot of times you just would purposefully put ourselves at this range. We're doing a lot less damage, and we're also going to be a lot less accurate, right? And then number three is going to come in at awareness. Awareness-wise, pay attention to where's my team, where's the enemy team. There were some times where we just didn't notice when we didn't have teammates with us, or we wouldn't notice when there was like a hog running up right next to us, right? So listen to your audio cues and pay attention to where enemy players are at. Besides that, pay attention to kill feed, right? That just as a quick reminder, right, it's 1 to 2 is advantage, disadvantage, 2 to 3 is a won or lost fight. Pay attention to that so that we don't end up staggering ourselves, right? When you've lost the fight, just look to get out if possible. If you can't, just let them kill you. Also, when your team just used 3 ults, you might want to be hesitant with using yours. The only time you would use your ult after your team's used that many is if like you're very like you think you need to use it to actually win the fight, or if, for example, they're using a bunch of their ults, right? Like you can ult as much as you want. You can use 6 ults if they just used 5 ults, right? Just because it evens out. You're not at a ult disadvantage if they just use a ton of ults as well. So if they ramp it up, you can ramp it up as well. But in that situation where you guys use 3 ults and they didn't use any, you wouldn't want to add in your 4th ult, right? Now, besides that, I think that those are the main ones with awareness. Now moving on to ultimate usage. Make sure that we are not ulting in won or lost fights. Make sure that we are looking to just. I think we used it pretty frequently. I think that was like the main one with it. Lots of times we just only got like 1 kill or so with High Noon. Remember that we can look to do other things with our High Noon. We didn't die a lot with it, but we also didn't really use it in the best scenarios. Keep in mind, one of the best ways to use High Noon is to go on off angles with them and take flanks as well, because that's going to get us, give us a surprise advantage. It's going to get us around shields and around tanks, and it's going to get us to the back line. So off angle High Noons are going to be really effective, and I didn't really see us going for them too often. I really only saw us using protection High Noons, where we kind of sat behind our team. And then that comes down to kind of positioning as well. That might get us more value out of our High Noons. Most of the time, I really only saw us getting like 1 kill max out of it, which isn't terrible. It's just not as effective, and it's not going to do as much for you than if we got like a 3-man, right? Or a 6-man or anything of that sort, right? It's just going to be doing more for us if we get more kills out of it. Besides that, final one is going to, coming in at number 5 is our ability usage. Flashbang, make sure we're following up on the tracer headshots with it. We did get most of them, but we missed a couple. Make sure that we are just landing them effectively, then we're using it more often. Like sometimes we just like have an opportunity right in front of us, like a hog who just got hooked, and we just wouldn't roll in and flash, right? Make sure we're thinking of ways we can use our roll. You can use it for mobility, to dodge things, and then also you can look to use it to reload, and we just sometimes we just hold on to it, but honestly it wasn't that big of a deal. So that is pretty much it. So do you have any questions about anything we've talked about?
Rest in
Not the I don't let's see. Pretty much like the last game, I think you've noticed I was always going for the fire or whatever. Are there any like I guess okay, so yesterday I was playing a lot of Overwatch, and the 2 main heroes where I was just struggling a lot were against Roadhogs and Faras. And I guess my question is like, how would you counter them? Is like a McCree a good counter, or like? Ooh.
Generally in this game, there are no counters to there's no one character that counters another character. That's just
Okay.
usually people have that misconception, and they think that like, okay, if I swap to this character, I automatically counter that other character. Now there are some decent ones, and you can have characters that are stronger versus other characters, because obviously
Right.
all hit scan characters are just going to be better against Pharah than a non-hit scan character. Like you're not going to
Right.
do too well against a Pharah on Doomfist or Junkrat, but there's no hit scan character out of all the ones that are just gonna like mean that Pharah can't physically participate in the game. More so,
Right.
how it works is that team compositions do that. When you have a bunch of people, so like let's say you had 2 hit scans and you had a like Baptiste and a Zenyatta, or Baptiste and like an Ana, and you had, you know, a Sigma and a Roadhog, right? Just like all people who like can all contest Pharah and chip in. That's where
Okay.
Pharah might not be nearly as good. Like you're gonna do a whole lot against her because she just has a ton more pressure. It's so much more pressure to have like 6 people who can tickle her than 1 McCree who can kill her decently good, right? So that's just kind of how it works. Again, with Roadhog, I probably say like characters that are decent against him are like, if I just like went through all the DPS, like Ashe isn't like. Ashe is like meh. Bastion's decently good, but also Roadhog's also good against Bastion. Doofus is terrible. Echo is decent. Genji is decent. Hanzo is decent. Junkrat's not he's like decent. McCree is honestly pretty good actually against a Roadhog because he can flashbang him out of his hook and his healing, which is really good. May is again pretty good. Farah pretty good because she can stay out of his range of everything. Reaper pretty good. Soldier decent. Sombra pretty good. Symmetra decent. Torbjorn decent. Tracer decent. Widow decent. Like there's not Roadhog's a really good duelist. There's no one character. He's probably better than like all DPS in like just one-on-one duels. Say maybe like Tracer, or May would maybe be the other one too. But and besides that, there's no like one character that's going to roll them, and it's more about your play style. Like for
Yeah.
example, like on McCree, like you're not gonna be able to kill Farah if you're a mile away from her. So make sure we're getting closer. That was like one of the big ones. Make sure that we are not just sitting main and we're getting closer to her. We're taking off angles. We're getting up next to her. Maybe we can use High Noon against her. I never saw us use like an ult to counter her at all.
Right.
Like High Noon and Visor are both pretty effective to take out a Farah, right? Those are a lot of the big ones. Also, if like Mercy's like keep in mind Mercy is an option. Usually you want to focus Farah first, but Mercy is also an option if she's like closer or low or whatever, right? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, because yesterday I was getting screamed at a lot, talking about like people would be in chat, DPS sucked, they couldn't kill Roadhog or anything like that, and it was
Yeah,
like, oh, okay.
DPS cannot, most DPS cannot 1v1 a Roadhog. In fact, most of the times, if it's just a one-on-one, you're going to want to run away rather than actively seek it out, right? Like, you don't take duels in which you have the disadvantage. You take duels where you have the advantage, right? Like, if it's, for example, think really easy, you can think about this really in simple terms. If it's a 2v1, like, they're coming at you with two people and you're one person, why would you basically say yes to that? Right? Whereas you should probably be saying no to that. But if you have two people and they are one person, then you say, okay, come here, I'm gonna and then you try to force them into it, right? So you take duels where you have an advantage, not a disadvantage. McCree versus Roadhog is a disadvantage duel. You're most likely going to lose that duel unless you have like some other factor such as teammates, or he's low, or he doesn't have abilities, or maybe you have your team with you to help you out, right? Or you just have
Dude,
shields and
one sec,
protection.
he'll be right back upstairs.
That meant for Nami. Right?
Too slow.
But that wasn't to me. Alright, I'm gonna wait till you come back. I'm gonna start the recording here.